Hello, dear viewers. Today we're going to be looking at the film The Kashmir Files, and we're going to ask the question and answer it whether or not it is a work of propaganda. Let's begin. Before I get into the answer to the question of whether it's propaganda or not, I want to first explain how this whole issue, this question arose in the last week. It is because Israeli filmmaker who was a jury member in the Indian Federation, International Film Federation of India, I think that's what it's called, and I, uh, the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. And in this, a foreign juror named Nadav Lapid, uh, sorry, who I've talked about already, he said that the film The Kashmir Files is propaganda. Now, I want to examine that claim by looking at the film and looking at the meaning of propaganda. And I also want to talk about the film itself and give my thoughts on it. Before I talk about the film, I have to talk about the issue that it talks about, which is the Kashmiri Pandits' uh, genocide or exodus, whichever word you want to use, from Kashmir. That happened in 1990, when on 19 January 1990, hundreds of thousands of Kashmiri Pandits were forced to leave Kashmir because of threats from radical Muslim terrorists, and that's what happened. I've spoken about this in a previous video about this movie. You'll see the link to that on the screen. And yeah, it's basically sugarcoating or any hiding of the true atrocities. It showed the brutality of the issue that the Kashmiri Pandits face. So that's why it's so famous, and many people in India felt that the Mr. Nadav Lapid, by calling the film propaganda, was also insulting the horror and the atrocities faced by the Kashmiri Pandits. So now I'll talk about what propaganda is and how it fits or how it does not fit into the Kashmir Files. So, propaganda is defined in Wikipedia as a communication that is primarily used to influence or persuade an audience to further an agenda which may not be objective and may be selectively presenting facts to encourage a particular synthesis or perception, or using loaded language to produce an emotional rather than a rational response to the information that is being presented. A wide range of materials and media are used for conveying propaganda messages, which changed as new technologies were invented, including paintings, cartoons, posters, pamphlets, films, radio shows, TV shows, and websites. The term is essentially contested, and some have argued for a neutral definition while it is normally used in a negative and pejorative sense. Those argued for a neutral definition said that the ethics of propaganda depend on intent and context, while others define it as necessarily unethical and negative. Emma Bryant, who is a British scholar and academic researcher on media and was involved in exposing the Facebook Cambridge Analytica data scandal concerning data misuse and disinformation, defines it as a deliberate manipulation of representations, including text, pictures, video, speech, etc., with the intention of producing any effect in the audience, example, action or inaction, reinforcement or transformation of feelings, ideas, attitudes, or behaviors that is desired by the propagandist. So, yeah, the Now we have to also, before I go on, I'll talk about the types of propaganda. Um, Propaganda, neutrally, as a systematic form of purposeful persuasion that attempts to influence the emotions, attitudes, opinions, and actions of a specified target audience for ideological, political, or commercial purposes through the controlled transmission of one sided messages, which may or may not be factual, via mass and direct media channels. Um, Now, so this is what propaganda is. It's basically an attempt to uh, basically convince the public of a certain agenda, a certain idea, mainly a political agenda, and it's meant to influence the public's emotions, attitudes, opinions, and actions. It makes them view a certain issue, a certain group of people, or a set of facts in a certain light that the maker of the propaganda wants them to view it as. Now, let's talk about the movie The Kashmir Files. One uh, key component of propaganda, as an in its negative definition, is that it involves fraud, um, falsehood, and misleading claims in it, and manipulation. That's if the Kashmir Files is indeed propaganda, then essentially um, it could be that it could be based on false facts. Things shown in the film are indeed true and were factually correct. And the film takes viewers back to 1989 when, due to its rising Islamic Jihad, a huge conflict erupted in Kashmir, forcing the great majority of Hindus to flee the valley. According to estimates, roughly 100,000 of the valley's 140,000 Kashmiri Pandit inhabitants migrated between February and March 1990. More of them fled in the years that followed until just about 3,000 families remained in the valley by 2011. The movie, which is based on video interviews with first generation Kashmiri Pandit victims of the Kashmir genocide, begins with the episode of the year 1990. It shows a then CM of Jammu and Kashmir, Farooq Abdullah, had tendered his resignation. Abdullah had lost control back in 1984, probably after he had visited a conference in Kashmir and shared the platform with the Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front's leader, Yasin Malik. And so this is shown in the film when uh, in a scene in the film where an IAS officer and a police officer meet the then chief minister, who is then seen meeting uh, the Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front leader. In reality, his name is Yasin Malik, but in this movie, he is called Bitta Karate. And so that is a fact. And Bazaar, Amira Kadal. He was being watched after he had given death sentence to Makbul Bhatt, the leader of JKLF, whom he had found involved in the murder of Amar Chand, a CID police sub-inspector of Jammu and Kashmir Police, resident of Nadihal village of Baramulla district. So this is again a fact. Warnings through newspaper Al Safa to all Hindus to leave Kashmir immediately. The film shows the threats received by the Hindu community. This scene in the Kashmir Files, where the Hindu women are deliberately harassed by Muslim ladies and small children, leave the viewers painful and agonizing. This is a true incident. Uh, the Hindu community had no access to basic survival needs like food and water. No grocery shops in the valley allowed the Kashmir Hindu women to enter and purchase food items, which is shown in the film and is true. Further, those Hindus who arranged for the grains or opened grocery shops for the community were either killed or threatened to leave. A small boy aged between 5 to 7 in the movie is seen chanting slogans to get rid of the Hindu community. Al Safa, Hindu Dafa. He shouted, uh, go face to face with one of our soldiers when they're armed and actually ready to fight. They'll always try to catch them unguarded, like the cowards that they are. Okay, besides, for, onto the main topic again. For Indian Air Force personnel, Squadron Leader Ravi Khanna, Corporal D.B. Singh, Corporal Uday Shankar, and Airman Azad Ahmad were killed, and 10 other IAF personnel were injured. So, this is another fact. Nearly 30 years after the brutal killing of four unarmed officers, the TADA court in Jammu in the year 2020 framed charges against Yasin Malik and six others involved in the attack. And this year, after this film was released, no, not because of it, but just not saying that, he was sentenced for the murders of these officers. And there's a clip in the Kashmir Files which shows a senior journalist posed at the Kashmir News justifying the brutal killings of the Kashmiri Hindus. This is a fact. This scene is the prime pick from the year 2004 when the liberal journalist Barka Dutt had contextualized the genocide of Kashmiri Pandits. She said that the Pandits were privileged and the poor Muslims were uh, oppressed by them, and so that they revolted. This was just an economic dispute. She says that the Barka Dutt could be seen talking about how the Kashmiri Pandits were comparatively wealthy and had good jobs. She adds that this led to gradual resentment among the majority of Muslims. In 2004, when Barka Dutt had been in journalism for almost 10 years, a show called Kashmiri Pandits, a Forgotten Minority, was aired, where Dutt began the show by showing ravaged colonies of the Kashmiri Pandits and some sound bites from the persecuted Hindus. Later, she said, what all this has bred is a violent state is completely polarized along religious lines. And no, this is something this comment about friendship between Hindus and Muslims, politics of hate ruining that friendship. She openly toed the lines of Kashmiri separatists who wanted to blame Governor Jagmohan for the genocide. And nobody pointed out the reality that the relative economic affluence of the Hindu community was mostly because they invested in education, thus ending up with good jobs. It wasn't because that they were denying jobs from the Kashmiri Muslims. The film also shows that Yasin Malik was supported by the then government and intellectuals. I've talked about Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir's Farooq Abdullah's meeting with Yasin Malik. They talk about how in the film he's called Beta Karate, but they talk about how he was invited to the highest office of the land, which obviously refers to the Prime Minister's office, and he did meet Prime Minister Manmohan Singh in 2006. That's any Prime Minister would meet such a terrorist, and that he was feted and allowed to live free. I'm glad that finally justice has been done to him, but I do acknowledge that it's far too late. But I'm glad with this current government that they're no longer going soft on these terrorists. Malik had met far left anti India propagandist Arundhati Roy, who has always been at the forefront of instigating Kashmiri youths to wage war against the Indian state. This is true. She has always been anti India and always supported Kashmiri terrorists against the country. So, yeah, everything that they've shown in the film is indeed a fact. So, now, is the Kashmir Files propaganda or not? Well, we've seen the definition of propaganda. It means to influence public opinion by presenting a set of narratives, ideas, and facts in order to make the public feel a certain emotion, to believe certain ideas, and to commit certain acts. Now, does this film do that? Well, it does, and propaganda is political in nature. That's another key part of the definition. Now, the film, is it political? It was not made by any political party, including the BJP. It's not, doesn't tell people to vote for any party, and but it does show that the BJP, the current BJP government, is doing more for the Kashmiri Pandits and by removing Article 370, and that they are better than the previous governments under which the killings of the Kashmiri Pandits happened, voted by the BJP, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and it got tax exemptions in various BJP ruled states. So the BJP did uh, promote it and support it uh, after the filming was done, after the film was completely made, but that doesn't mean that it was something created by them. They just supported it incidentally. And so while it does, the director of in his through the movie does show the party in a particular light, there's no advocacy, direct advocacy for it. The name of the party is not mentioned. The name of any politician, the ruling party, is not mentioned. Although the names of politicians from the opposition, not necessarily Congress, but other opposition parties such as the NCP in Jammu and Kashmir are mentioned, such as Farooq Abdullah and also not used the NC National Conference, I think that's called, didn't exist at that time, but they do talk about Sheikh Abdullah, who was a Kashmiri politician, and they do criticize him for that. But really, this is not a political film. It's just shows that it's just slightly biased politically, but it's doesn't qualify as so. I guess in that sense, it could qualify as propaganda, but very light propaganda, not something heavy. It's not a political production. Second, does the film uh, intend for the audience to do something, to commit any act? No, not at all. The film does not ask the audience to do anything, to say anything. But it does evoke emotions out of them because it shows horrific crimes being committed against innocent people,